Maybe, we'll see.
We'll call the regular meeting in New Ulm Economic Development Authority for Tuesday, November 13, 2018, 8 a.m. to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. We do have a quorum. We'll go on to item number 2, approval of the minutes of our last meeting.
I'll offer a motion to approve those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on anything? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3 from the EDA staff regarding administrative activities during the month of October 2018.
The activities this month are fairly standard. There was nothing outside of what normally happens every month. I will note that there are 85 units leased at Garden Terrace, which means there's 3 vacancies, and there's 53 currently on the waiting list. No new loans have come through, but we were able to process a loan for, a roof at the KNUJ that went through. So that's been processed.
Those 3 vacancies, if I remember correctly, were due to rehabs reasons that they
Mhm.
needed work to do in their vacancies and their painting and carpeting, and
Yeah.
so it wasn't real vacancies. It was work that needed to be done. So with that, I'll offer a motion to approve the administrative activities.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4A, consider authorizing a change order to Broadway House LED retrofit lighting project.
This we change over about $1,500. When we did the initial assessment, we had missed 6 fixtures that needed to be added to the order, and then they had replaced the lights in the stairwells, and they were blinding people, so we had to move them up. So that was additional cost, but then we did receive 2 credits of about $93, bringing that total up to $1,567.64.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4B, consider motion authorizing the payment of the public housing program claims. That's the amount of $34,881.42.
Make a motion. I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the payments. Any more discussion?
The only question I had was, we again see elevator costs on here, and I don't
Yeah.
just had questions whether or not this was regular costs, or were these, again, additional costs? We sure seem to be spending a lot of money on that elevator. We know?
Those were repair costs, and I can email you what those were. I know.
So they were not part of any, I mean that's $6,300. So it was not part of any regular service calls. It was
Yeah, it was a repair cost. Yeah.
repair costs. Okay. Gotta have an elevator.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5A, discuss revised draft of the home buyer assistant loan program. Chris?
Yeah. So the draft actually didn't change. This was just comments that Roger had for your discussion to see if you want to change anything to the current draft. And he had questions. Does the rebate for a New Ulm high school graduate, does that exclude home-based schooled students, individuals that don't graduate from a local high school but get their GED here? And then if MVL, even though it's not in the city limits, also qualifies for the rebate as well. So just some thoughts. At the end of the day, you could remove the entire clause and just have it, it's just a straight loan. There's no forgiveness of it, that could be an option.
I thought about it a lot this weekend, and I think you have to include MVL because there's a lot of New Ulm kids that obviously go there. And I think we're getting into this sinking mud that I don't know how you make it fair for everybody. So my thought was to exclude it, and without trying to make it, I just don't know how you make it fair for everybody. And I like it. I like the overall idea of it, but I just don't know how we make it fair. And if Roger was here, I was going to ask him, like, is there any other way or any other way we can do it? And if he didn't have an idea, then I was going to recommend we pull it. But or if there's any other way we can figure out a system of giving somebody a reduction because they're from New Ulm, but I couldn't think of any. So I don't know if anybody else has an idea.
I agree. I think it gets to be a little bit, it could bog down the program if we start kind of getting into that kind of hair splitting. I think that the fact that it's a zero interest loan, if you compare it to a lot of other programs, it's still very attractive. The only question I would like to raise is, and then this is just putting on my other hat for a minute. I know it says that the payments are deferred for 3 years, and I know we had previously discussed 5 years. The reason being is if it's 5 years or longer, when we go to qualify someone for their first mortgage, we can exclude this payment and their qualification ratios if it's a 5-year or greater. So I don't know, and this is something we maybe want to discuss today. I say we either do it 5 years or we don't do it at all, and we just begin repayment right from the inception. There's two schools of thought here. I think one of them being if these borrowers begin repayment right away, we can replenish what would be like a revolving loan fund and then get those funds back out to assist other home buyers more quickly. And you have to contrast that against, okay, if this might be a make or break, this payment may either cause someone to qualify or not qualify if we defer it. So if we're going to do it 3 years, we can't we can't exclude it. So we either should think about a 5-year or maybe just think about immediate repayment or a repayment, within 60 days or something of loan closing or something like that. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I didn't know what anyone else thought about it, but as long as we're talking about it yet, so we haven't made a final draft. So,
Any more comments?
Why was it changed from 5 to 3?
I think I just lowered it because I wasn't sure what that credit term was. So we can change it back to 5 because I thought it was a smaller term to cancel out, but we can move it back to 5, and
well,
I'm
and
fine
I
with
don't
that.
know, are we thinking we're going to fund this yearly for the next several years until such time as this fund begins replenishing itself? Or I didn't know some of the long-term mechanics of it, how we want to proceed with it. I think it's I'm getting calls and emails all the time. When's this going to start? When's this going to start? So, I mean, I know there's a lot of, I think, enthusiasm in the community for something like this to go. So I think it's going to be pretty well received with the realtors and the lenders in town. And I think it's going to be helpful in hopefully bridging that gap for affordability. But so I think the fine tuning of it we can look at, but I'm just curious because to me, we want to get the money recycled and revolving back into the community, then we may not want to wait the 5 years. So we have to kind of maybe look at that seriously, how we want to fund it and how much eventually we anticipate this overall fund to be down the road, and what would be our target goal for that. And I'm assuming we're not going to put all the money in right up front. Every year we're going to maybe allocate a certain amount of funds to go in there until we get it to a point where we feel that it's adequately serving what our objectives are.
Could we consider, instead of this graduate from high school, the part of a loan forgiveness if they pay additional more than their mortgage? Therefore, we get the money back quicker, we can return some of them, I don't know,
Sure, I know what you're saying.
I don't know. We get
Well,
the-
we could make the deferment based on a need too. If they can qualify at repayment right away, then that might be a situation where we could put that into the terms of the note, but if they don't otherwise qualify, we could look at a deferment process as well. I mean, then again, we're getting down to brass tacks, a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah.
detail on a case-by-case basis. These things are easier if we're kind of across the board and don't have so many stipulations with it
Right.
too. So,
I guess my comment would be is make it simple.
yeah, I agree.
Simpler the easier.
And we can try it, I suppose, and I don't know, maybe this would be a good question for the city attorney, if a year from now or 2 years from now, we're saying, maybe this part isn't working like we had thought. Can we make some adjustments and changes? I could imagine that we probably could, going forward, but maybe this is, I agree, making it simple to start with, because this is all our first endeavor into it to see how it works, and then we can do some fine tuning a year or two from now down the road too.
Okay, so then, so you want me to keep in the high school graduate portion for this first go-round for the final draft, and then are we gonna do deferred or non-deferred at the end of the day?
Those are the questions.
I would prefer that the New Ulm student incentive be taken out.
I think so too.
I just think it's just too many clause in there, and it's just, doesn't need to be in there.
There'd be too many arguments about my kid this, but I don't know how we make it fair.
Okay.
I like it, I just don't know how we make it fair.
Yeah, if we kept it, I would say, we include everyone that, MVL and homeschooled and everything, but you're right, it's gonna get messy.
Right, but I'd left a month before I graduated, and I graduated from X high school, and that's not fair, and I went 11 and a half years here, and I just see all that kind of stuff coming back. And
Very true.
and maybe we'll think of a different incentive in a year, type of thing.
What do
Let's
you
take that
guys
out.
think about the deferral thing? Personally, my thoughts on it are, if it's there, we're gonna reach more potential home buyers. When somebody's buying their first home, it can quite often get to just a few dollars here or there will make the difference between them qualifying and not qualifying. So,
Right.
and it's an arbitrary number. Don't ask me why. You have to ask our friends in Washington why they say 5 years is good and 3 years isn't, because that's exactly where it's coming from. I think it's going to impact people potentially that we're going to strike that part of the market that we want, the first-time home buyer, low to moderate income, to make home ownership more affordable. So my take is I'd like to see the 5-year. And if we decide that we don't, I think we just go to the other extreme and just start getting repayment right away so that we can start turning the funds right back out into the community. So all or nothing is kind of my take on it, I guess. So.
I can live with that.
I guess I'd support the 5-year.
If we look at this, and I'm just checking this out, if we have a loan of up to $10,000 and we have $50,000, we can help 5 people. And if they don't have to pay it back for 5 years, nobody else can have the opportunity of this.
Exactly. And that's why I think we also have to ask ourselves, are we going to give $50,000 a year for the next 5 years? And, and eventually get up to $250,000 into this fund. I think that's an important consideration we need to make now as it relates to that deferment period, so that we have to make the decision, do we want to see this thing going forward, and are we going to be in it for a committed period of time and to fund it for over a period of time? Because you're absolutely right. If we sit here for 5 years, then that money just sits out there until it starts getting repaid, and then we're going to wait 5 years potentially till we can do anything for any potential home buyers over this period. So that's where I say all or nothing, you know, and some people may not qualify based on that, but then, you know, then there might be other situations. Maybe they just need to downsize the purchase price of their home a little bit or something. I don't know.
It won't always be 10,000.
No, exactly. I think we base it on what their need is in terms of to make and facilitate the purchase. Just because we're saying we're going to give 10,000, my hope would be is that we don't give out 10,000 in every case. We can finance first mortgages at this point in the marketplace with as little as like 3% down. So, you know, they could potentially be $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 and still make a purchase happen. The 10,000 is just a capped limit. And I think we can base that on, because this program also is going to be at or below median income levels for the county, isn't that correct? We're capping it at an income level?
I wasn't going to cap it at an income level.
Okay,
This is going to be kind of, I mean, our target would be for individuals that are kind of at that 120%, you know,
Median,
a
okay,
median,
okay.
you know, that where they can afford a house, but they may not have enough for a down payment to actually get in. That's kind of the market that this program was designed for. And currently, we're only offering 5% up to 5% of the purchase price, up to $10,000. So each
Yeah,
person
so
would
it's
only
gonna-
be getting 5%. So it'd be less than the 10,000. So we're probably looking at 6 to 7 out of the 50,000 that's there.
and maybe we make a forgiveness thing based on if someone decides they want to go right into immediate repayment, we could forgive a portion of it if they were to do that versus the deferred term. I mean, we could get, you make another stipulation based on that to encourage people to begin repayment. And if they qualify to do so, to do that, and in doing so, we can recapture at least some of the money sooner, but then we maybe give a forgiveness over that first 5 years or something of 10% or something, up to a potential of 50% over 5 years, or something like that. I don't know. Since we're the ones doing it, we can make it however we want, which is kind of a nice feature.
If you look at the school loan programs, they said if you make your payments for 10 years, you know, you're resolved of that loan if you happen to be in a government, you know, position for
Right.
that period of time. You could sit there and say, if you made your payments for 4 years, you get the last year. So you're not having to pay 1 year and all of a sudden now they can't pay, kind of a thing for the second year. If they made 4 years of payments,
50 years forgiven.
you could forgive the last year.
I like that.
I mean,
That's-
so
that's a
then you
good
don't have
way
to do it every year. and
Right.
Kind of mess with that.
That does make it more complicated, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Without being late? Is there
Yeah.
not that in there?
Absolutely.
Like
We
for,
want people to make their payments on time. That's just the banker and me talking, but, you know, hey.
The other aspect, you know, you talk about up to $50,000, I guess I would agree, it's not going to be $50,000, you know, to be quite honest, you know, maybe 30, 35. But on an annual basis, the EDA has the financial wherewithal to pledge up to $50,000 a year. That's just not a problem. You have the cash, and so if you're going to say we're going to pledge $250,000 up front, I don't even think that would be a problem, but you don't have to. You just have to look at every year.
I think it's like,
Pledging certain
let's
amount of
dabble
money.
our toes in it this year or
Yeah.
for next year, and then see how it goes, and then we can make a decision based on the success of the program and as we get more acclimated to it. And I'm sure Nicole will agree, budgeting is very important. We want to know from now up into the next 5 years, kind of a game plan here, at least initially. And I would agree, like up to 50,000 would be very reasonable for the
You
EDA
may
to
find
consider.
out in the end that all you really need to budget every year is $30,000.
Exactly.
After the first 2 years.
Are we going
Giving you
back?
enough direction, or you?
Yeah,
I'm
going
good.
back to the drawing board.
Yes,
Sorry,
we will.
Chris.
This is a work in progress.
It is. We'll bring it back next
Don't get
month.
frustrated. It's a work in progress.
No, and that's kind of how I wrote the programs initially. Was
Okay.
here's everything, and
Yep.
we can strip it out and change it.
I really like the idea of keeping the 5-year deferment possibility in there, but if a borrower comes in and agrees to repay initially, we could forgive the 5th year. I think that's a great idea, you know. Give them some incentive to step in right away to repay, and that way it allows us to replenish that fund and get the money turned back out into the community more quickly. But then there are some instances where that 5-year may be the only way they're going to be able to qualify. So we can kind of keep that door open as well.
I want to see the math on that before I would approve that, so.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, I probably would agree, but I want to see the math. I want to see the numbers.
Okay. We can do that.
But I also think we should, as a board, kind of set our sights of saying, you know, up to $50,000 a year for the next 5 years, that we'd be willing to fund this program to kind of get it up and going and keep it moving forward. And then after that time, we could see what the needs are and how the funds are being dispersed, and then from there, make a final decision if we want to move on or
Sure.
keep it capped at a certain amount.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Anything more you need on that, Chris?
No.
Should be good.
Anything else on that? Seeing none, we'll, excuse me, we'll go to item 6A, discuss the revised draft of the down payment assistance Garden Terrace Residence Program.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, this is just some city attorney comments. He had a little bit of a problem with the $25,000 annual cap, and I think it was just the numbers with the number of residents that are in Garden Terrace. The $25,000 cap would be exceeded in 1 year if everyone decided to move out at once. But we did put in there that it's first come, first serve. And when we, had polled the residents, it was about 3 or 4 that were actually interested in the program, and we figure every year you might get between 1 to 3 people that would actually be able to move out and use the money. And then his other concern would be the final resolution, that would be passed by the EDA, just to make sure that it's a $200 monthly credit for basically bookkeeping only, not that they were getting $200, each resident was getting $200 a month or anything. It's just a bookkeeping credit only that is transferred to them when they do want to purchase a home. And then he was looking at maybe having them do a minimum period of time, but I think every resident there has to sign a lease, and I think in the draft it states that they have to be in good standing with their lease before they can access the money. So
We actually do have month by month, they just pay a higher rate.
okay,
So that probably should be addressed in some
okay.
manner.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
Are you hearing any comments on this one? This program doesn't appear to be as popular, right?
No, I mean it's
3 or 4, I think.
Yeah,
is
3 or
what we
4.
originally said
Yeah.
might have an interest. Okay.
I look at this as more of a long-term thing. Over the next 5 years, if we get 1 or 2, that might be good, but
Right.
as time goes on, if we get people there that are not long-term tenants like we seem to see today, then I think this could gain in popularity. That's the hope, I guess, just to have it there.
Right.
And
Any more feedback? Seeing none, we'll go on to item number 7A. Consider a motion to appoint Chris Dalton as the acting executive director of the EDA and authorize the board chair to execute the excess authority form.
I'll move it.
second,
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 8, from the Economic Development Director, Assistant City Manager regarding activities during the month of October 2018. Chris?
Okay. So the main highlight here is Windings is finally okay with moving forward with their MIF contract. So Deed is putting those together, and we should get those fairly soon, so we can route those for signatures and they can get started with their project. We do have an individual interested in possibly doing some work in the city, Todd Mayhoff. He's coming in to look at potential sites, and he is looking at the EDA properties over by Broadway House. So I told him, put a proposal together, and we can bring it before you to see if it's something that the EDA would like to move forward with. And then working with DLC and Winding still on getting their revolving loan up and running. And then for housing, attended the Housing Institute meeting. We're getting slowly closer to getting some stuff together to bring to possible housing developers in January. So we're putting together a concept paper for the developers to look at to see if they'd want to do some affordable housing or housing here in New Ulm.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion accepting the EDA's / Assistant City Manager's report regarding activities during the month of October 2018.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. With no more business, meeting adjourned.